They say weddings are about gratitude, about honoring the people who raised you. I paid for her flowers, her gown, her dream venue. I gave everything, except the deed to my home. When I told her no, she smiled for the cameras, and then struck me with the cake stand. The glass shattered, my arm bled, the room went still. I said nothing, just walked away, past the guests, the cameras, the lies. 10 minutes later, one quiet call ended it all. No music, no food, no wedding. You won't believe what happened next. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. Before the cake stand, before the blood, before the phone call that changed everything. My life was measured not in grand accomplishments, but in quiet sacrifices, small victories. My name is Catherine Monroe, and for 66 years I've lived within the boundaries of duty and love. After my husband James died 20 years ago, leaving me with 7-year-old Emily, I became both mother and father, provider and protector. I worked as an elementary school principal, managing tight budgets, solving problems one child at a time. Every paycheck was divided. Mortgage, Emily's needs, college fund, the rest saved in small increments. James had built our house himself, room by room, board by board, in the quiet California suburb of Oakwood Heights. Even after he was gone, I could feel his presence in every corner he'd sanded, every door he'd hung with care. When Emily was small, she'd trace her fingers along the walls he built, asking why there were tiny marks and scratches. Because love isn't perfect, I'd tell her. It's made of mistakes and fixes, just like these walls. I raised her alone with a philosophy borrowed from my own mother. Teach her to be kind, not just successful. Emily was brilliant, straight A's, debate team captain, early acceptance to Berkeley. But somewhere between her freshman year and the glossy world of social media influencing, she fell into, the daughter who once pressed homemade flower cards into my lunch bag, transformed into someone who viewed gratitude as weakness. "Mom, you worry too much about appearances," she'd say during our monthly calls, the frequency of which had dwindled from weekly to occasional. "Not everyone can be as simple as you." I couldn't pinpoint when my careful budgeting became being cheap, or when my secondhand shopping became embarrassing. But the changes accumulated like sediment, settling invisible until the current shifted and revealed what lay underneath. When Emily called 18 months ago to announce her engagement, I felt the familiar mix of pride and distance. "Jordan's family owns 3 properties," she'd said, barely mentioning his personality, his dreams, his character. Her wedding planning transformed into a competition I didn't know we were having. Designer everything. Guest list filled with influencers I didn't recognize. Price tags that made my retired principal's budget scream silently. But I paid. For her happiness. For the mother I wanted to be. For the mother my mother had always been. Putting others first. Smiling through discomfort. Making do with less so. Emily could have more. The house fund I'd earmarked for repairs went to her dress. My vacation savings covered the imported flowers. The emergency fund I'd protected like a sacred trust paid for the venue Emily insisted was the only acceptable choice. This morning, arriving 2 hours early at the Redwood Ridge estate, I checked every detail Lena the wedding planner had promised. The altar arrangements, white orchids and garden roses, $8,000 worth of blooms I'd approved with a hand that trembled only slightly. The catering stations, farm-to-table menu, organic everything. Chosen because Emily said, "We can't have basic food at my wedding, Mom." I watched the staff set crystal glasses on tables covered in Belgian linen, remembering the chipped plates we'd used during Emily's childhood, how she'd helped me dry them after dinner, standing on a step stool to reach the cabinet. "Mrs. Monroe?" Lena appeared beside me, checking her tablet. "The photographer said Emily might be late. She's still at hair and makeup." Of course she was. Perfection took time, and Emily had inherited my late husband's patience with details. Though his had been about woodworking, hers about appearances. I nodded, thinking of the scrapbook I'd spent months creating for her wedding gift. Every photo carefully preserved. Her first day of school. James reading to her in the hammock he'd strung between oaks that now towered over our backyard. Christmas mornings when her excitement filled our modest house like light. I was admiring the ceremony arch when Emily's text came. "Mom, come to the bridal suite, now." Her tone, even in 2 lines, carried an edge I recognized. In my 40 years of dealing with children, I'd learned to distinguish genuine need from manipulation. This felt like the latter, but I went anyway, climbing the stairs to the estate's changing rooms, ignoring the weariness in my joints. Old houses had their quirks, but unlike my own sturdy home, this historic mansion groaned with pretension. Emily stood before the full-length mirror, a vision in ivory silk and lace, using my dress. The gown I'd bought after weeks of searching, balancing quality with cost. Her hair was perfectly coiffed, makeup flawless, but her expression held something hard, calculating. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something important." I waited, familiar with this pattern. Important usually meant expensive. "Jordan and I have been discussing our future," she began, watching me in the mirror. "This house is beautiful, but it's not sustainable for a couple starting out. We need real security." My heart began to slow, some protective instinct warning me. "We've decided to have children right away. Jordan's job is demanding. I'll need to be home with them, build my brand from there. But we need the right foundation." She turned to face me directly. "We need your house, Mom." The words hit me like ice water. "Excuse me. Your house. James built it, I know. But Mom, you're 66. Do you really need all that space? We're starting our family. It makes sense for you to sign it over to us. We'd take care of it. You could move to one of those nice senior apartments by the mall." I stared at her, this stranger wearing my daughter's face. "Emily, that house is my home. Your father built it. Daddy's been gone 20 years, Mom. This is about the living, not the dead." The casual dismissal of James's memory struck me physically. I felt my chest tighten. "That house is my financial security. It's my nest egg." "You're being selfish," she said. And there it was, the accusation I dreaded but expected. "I've always had to work around your limitations, your penny pinching, your obsession with being careful. I'm asking you to help us truly start our lives together." "Help you? Emily, I've paid for this entire wedding. The dress you're wearing, the flowers outside, every plate of food today. And that's wonderful, but Jordan and I need more. We deserve more than a wedding. We deserve a foundation." The word "deserve" echoed painfully. When had gratitude transformed into entitlement? When had my sacrifices become expectations? I thought of the early years after James died, working 2 jobs to keep the house, crying in bathroom stalls to preserve his legacy for Emily. Had all those sacrifices taught her the wrong lesson? "I won't sign over the house," I said quietly. "It's not up for discussion." Her face contorted, not with disappointment but rage. "You're sabotaging my marriage, my happiness, just like you sabotaged your own life by clinging to the past." The words hit their mark, but I remained steady. Years of managing irate parents had taught me to control my reactions. I'm sorry you feel that way, but my decision is final. She turned back to the mirror, fixing her veil with sharp, angry movements. Fine. Just don't expect me to pretend everything's perfect between us. I left the room with legs that felt disconnected from my body. In the hallway, I leaned against the wall, pressing my palms against its cool surface. This wasn't the daughter I'd raised. Or perhaps it was exactly the daughter I'd raised. One who'd learned that persistence and pressure could wear down opposition, because it had always worked on me. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The ceremony proceeded with scripted beauty. Emily glided down the aisle, every eye on her radiant smile. No one could see the frost in her glance when our eyes met. Jordan looked nervous but happy, oblivious to the tension. I sat in the front row, hands folded, a mother doing what mothers do, supporting even when support stung. During the reception, I stayed on the periphery, watching Emily work the room with practiced charm. She posed for photos with her bridesmaids, laughed at Jordan's family's jokes, accepted congratulations with grace. But she hadn't spoken to me since our conversation. I approached the gift table where the scrapbook waited among wrapped packages. Plain compared to the gleaming boxes and elaborate bows, its homemade cover felt suddenly naive. But inside were the moments that truly mattered. Her life in photographs, accompanied by notes I'd written, memories preserved. Maybe seeing our history would remind her of who we'd been to each other. I was reaching for it when I felt her presence. "Is that your gift, Mother?" The formal address cut deeper than her rage had. "Yes, I made it for you." "How quaint." She picked up the scrapbook, flipping through pages too quickly to see the love in each one. "Did you at least include the deed to the house?" "Emily, please." "Please what?" "Please understand that your stubbornness is ruining everything." She slammed the book shut. "You couldn't just do this one thing for me, for my marriage, for your grandchildren. Children I might have." The manipulation was clear, but it found its mark anyway. My hands trembled as I reached for the scrapbook. "I worked hard on this." "Of course you did. You always work hard on the wrong things." She turned to the cake table, reaching for the crystal stand that held welcome gifts, small boxes for guests to take home. The same cake stand that had belonged to James's mother, that I'd brought because Emily specifically asked for family touches. "Still," she continued, voice dripping with false sweetness, "I suppose I should thank you for the lovely party, for everything you did to make my day special." She lifted the stand, heavy crystal cathing the light. "Even if you failed where it truly mattered." Something in her eyes made me step back, but not far enough. The stand flew through the air with surprising force. I raised my arm instinctively, heard the sharp crack of crystal meeting bone. Pain exploded along my forearm as shards rained down. The world went silent except for the ring of settling glass. I looked down at my arm, watching blood bloom through the sleeve of my lavender dress. The dress I'd sewn myself because I'd spent the clothing budget on Emily's jewelry. When I looked up, Emily stood frozen, her face a mask of shock that quickly shifted to calculation. The silence broke as guests reacted. Gasps, chairs scraping, someone calling for ice. But I only saw Emily, this stranger who wore my daughter's features. I pressed my hand against the wound, feeling warm blood between my fingers. The pain was sharp but distant, overshadowed by a deeper ache that had been building for years. Without a word, I turned and walked toward the exit. "Catherine!" Carla's voice cut through the murmur. My best friend since our daughters were in kindergarten together. She'd witnessed everything from her table by the dance floor. "Wait, let me help you." But I needed to be alone. I needed space to process what had just happened, to understand how we'd arrived at this moment where my daughter could hurt me physically for denying her financially. Outside, the evening air was cool against my burning face. I found my car in the parking lot, sat behind the wheel with the door open, and finally looked at my arm. The glass had left a 3-inch gash, deep enough to need attention but not critical. I'd brought a first aid kit, residual mother worry, always preparing for children's scrapes and cuts. I wrapped the wound carefully, my hands surprisingly steady despite their trembling. In the quiet of my car, reality settled around me like fog. Everything I'd funded, every contract I'd signed, every detail I'd personally approved for this wedding, all in my name. Lena knew it, the caterers knew it, the venue knew it. Everyone knew except, apparently, Emily. I pulled out my phone, blood spotting the screen as I scrolled to Lena's number. My finger hovered over the call button. This would change everything, end everything. But looking down at my wounded arm, thinking of my empty house that I'd nearly lost to appease my daughter's expectations, I pressed dial. Lena answered on the second ring. "Catherine, is everything okay? I saw what happened. Do you need medical attention?" "I need you to stop everything," I said, my voice calmer than I felt. "Cancel it all." A pause. "The wedding?" "Everything in my name. The catering, the music, all of it. End it now." Another pause, longer this time. "Are you certain?" I thought of James, building our house board by board. I thought of Emily, tracing the imperfect walls. I thought of myself, giving and giving until the well ran dry. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life," I said, and hung up. Lena moved faster than I could have imagined. Within 10 minutes, I watched from my car as staff began discreetly dismantling the reception. Caterers packed away food that hadn't yet been served. The DJ started disconnecting his equipment. Floral arrangements were being removed from tables. Everything moved with the quiet efficiency of professionals who knew how to handle delicate situations. I couldn't see Emily from the parking lot, but I could imagine the growing confusion inside as phones were checked, quick conversations held with eyes that kept darting to the exits. The wedding photographer had captured the moment of the glass throw. I wondered if he'd deleted it or kept it as evidence of what happened when entitlement collided with boundaries. My arm throbbed beneath the makeshift bandage. The blood had soaked through the fabric, staining my lavender dress. The dress I'd sewn by hand because Emily's wardrobe budget had consumed what I'd set aside for myself. I remembered the evening I'd finished it, sitting at my kitchen table with Frank Sinatra playing. Softly, the same room where James had sketched the original house plans 40 years ago. I'd felt proud of the dress, proud of my ability to make something beautiful on a budget. Now it was ruined, marked with the blood of a boundary finally drawn. Carla appeared suddenly at my passenger door, making me jump. "Catherine, for God's sake, let me help." Without waiting for permission, she slid into the seat beside me. "Your arm." "It's not that bad," I interrupted. "Just a cut. Don't be stubborn." She pulled medical supplies from her purse. Hydrogen peroxide, gauze, antiseptic wipes. Occupational hazard of being a nurse. I'm always prepared. Her hands were gentle as she unwrapped my amateur bandaging. "This needs proper cleaning." I winced as she applied the peroxide. "You saw what happened." "Everyone saw what happened," Carla said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "The question is, what happens next?" While she worked, Voices grew louder from inside the venue. I recognized Emily's distinctive sharp tone, then Jordan's deeper one attempting to calm her. Heather Blake's measured words cut through both. The sliding glass doors opened, and Jordan's parents emerged, looking shell-shocked. They spotted my car, started walking toward us, but Carla caught their eye and shook her head almost imperceptibly. They redirected to their own vehicle. "Done," Carla announced, securing a proper bandage. "Now, do you want to tell me what you just did? Or shall I guess?" "I cancelled everything." She let out a long breath. "Everything?" "Everything." I flexed my fingers, testing the range of motion. Every contract was signed by me. I was the financial responsible party for all of it. Carla sat back, studying me with the frank assessment of someone who'd known me for 30 years. "Part of me wants to say good for you. Part of me wonders if you've lost your mind." "I haven't." I turned to look at the chaos I'd created. I found it. Through the windows, I could see Emily in the center of the reception hall, still in her beautiful gown, gesturing wildly. Lena stood near her, probably explaining the situation with the professionalism that had saved my sanity throughout this planning process. Guests were starting to filter toward the doors, confused whispers carrying on the evening breeze. "She threw a cake stand at me, Carla." "I saw. And now she's learning that actions have consequences." "For 20 years I've protected her from consequences," I admitted. "Maybe that's where I went wrong." A knock on my window made us both turn. Emily stood there, her wedding dress pristine except for a small wine stain from someone's dropped glass during the earlier commotion. Her face held a complicated mixture of emotions: anger, disbelief, and something that might have been panic. I rolled down the window slowly. "What did you do?" Her voice was barely controlled. "People are saying the wedding's cancelled, that everything's shutting down. What did you do?" "I exercised my right as the person who paid for everything," I replied calmly. "You can't do this. You can't just—" She stopped, seeming to realize for the first time that she was speaking to the woman she'd just physically assaulted. "Mom, I'm sorry about the cake stand. I lost my temper. But this is my wedding day. You're not seriously canceling everything because of one little argument." "One little argument," Carla muttered beside me. "Catherine, your daughter needs a reality check." Emily's eyes darted to Carla, then back to me. "Look, I know you're upset. I shouldn't have thrown the stand. But Mom, please, think about what you're doing. Think about all these people. Think about Jordan. This isn't just hurting me." I thought about Jordan. Passive, accommodating Jordan, who had stood silent when his fiancée assaulted his mother-in-law, who had watched me bleed and made no move to check if I was okay. The same man who had called me Catherine for the entire 2 years of their relationship, never once using Mom, despite my invitation to do so. "I've thought about nothing but other people for decades," I said. "Every decision, every sacrifice, every budget cut. This one time, just this once, I'm thinking about myself." Emily's face flushed. "This is because I asked for the house? Because I wanted something permanent for my family?" "You didn't ask, Emily. You demanded. And when I said no, you attacked me." I gestured to my bandaged arm. "You drew blood because I wouldn't sign over my home, your father's home, the one thing I have that's truly mine." Her expression shifted, calculation replacing rage. "I overreacted, I know that. But Mom, think about grandchildren, your future grandchildren. Don't you want them to have a good home?" The manipulation attempt was transparent. They will, with their parents, who both have jobs, and the ability to earn their own house. Through the window, I watched as the catering trucks began pulling away. The venue staff had started stacking chairs. Guests were drifting to their cars, phone conversations happening in hushed tones. Emily turned and saw it too, the systematic dismantling of the day she'd planned for 2 years. "You're ruining my life," she said, turning back to me. But now her voice held a note of uncertainty. "No, Emily. I'm stopping my financial support of your entitlement. There's a difference." She stood there for a moment longer, then spun on her expensive heels and stalked back inside. Through the windows, I watched her rejoin Jordan, gesturing frantically. He looked toward my car, then at his parents, then back at Emily. His body language suggested defeat. "You know," Carla said, breaking the silence, "I love you like a sister, but I've wanted to shake some sense into that girl for years." "I know." I leaned back against the headrest. "You tried to warn me. Remember when she threw her graduation party and expected you to pay for premium liquor for 200 people, and she didn't even invite you until the night before?" I did remember. I'd written that check too, telling myself it was temporary behavior, that she'd mature. Or when she graduated from Berkeley and called asking for money to start her influencer career. $10,000 for equipment she needed. I'd given her $8,000, the rest of James's life insurance money that I'd saved for emergencies. Or the time she came home for Christmas 3 years ago and spent the whole week criticizing your furniture, your decorating, the way you folded towels. I'd refinished some of the criticized furniture afterward, tried to update my style to please her. It had never been enough. Someone had to draw the line eventually, Carla concluded. I just wish it hadn't been drawn in blood. My phone buzzed, a text from Emily. "I'm sorry about your arm. Please fix this. I love you." 3 sentences. The first 2 manipulative, the third too late and too little. I typed back, "I love you too. That's why this had to happen," and blocked her number. "Jesus, Catherine," Carla breathed. "You're really doing this?" "I really am." We sat in silence as the sun set behind the estate, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The scene would have been beautiful if not for the chaos my decision had created. But for the first time in years, I felt something like peace. The estate grounds grew quieter as guests continued to depart, their confusion evident in hushed conversations and sidelong glances toward the parking lot. My car had become something of a spectacle, the epicenter of the wedding catastrophe. I watched faces I'd fed and entertained for years hurry past without acknowledgement, protecting themselves from association with whatever drama had unfolded. "They're all leaving," Carla observed, her nurse's detachment giving way to protective anger. "Not one of Emily's friends has come to check on you." "They aren't my friends," I reminded her. "They're Emily's audience." I'd noticed the transition years ago. Emily's gatherings had shifted from conversations to performances, real connections replaced by filtered photos and highlight reels. Her friend group consisted of carefully curated personalities who enhanced her brand rather than challenged her character. Through the window, I watched Jordan's father, Gerald Blake, approach our car. Unlike the others, he walked with purpose rather than avoidance. He'd always been kind to me, a fellow educator, understanding the challenges of raising children alone. He'd lost his wife when Jordan was 12. I rolled down the window as he approached. "Catherine," he said gently, "how's your arm?" "It's manageable," I replied. "How's everything else?" He sighed, running a hand through his silver hair. "Confusing. Emily's saying the wedding's over. That you've canceled everything. Lena confirmed it. The guests don't know what to do. I'm sorry you were caught in this, Gerald. You and Heather. You've been nothing but kind. Caught in what, exactly? His eyes held genuine concern. What happened in there? Carla spoke up before I could. Your soon-to-be daughter-in-law assaulted Catherine over a house. Then when Catherine exercised her right to control what she paid for, Emily painted herself as the victim. Gerald's face tightened. Assaulted? That's a strong word, Carla. Look at the bandage, Carla retorted. Look at the blood on her dress. Emily threw a crystal cake stand at her. There's physical evidence. I touched Carla's arm, silently asking her to ease off. It was a complex situation, Gerald. But yes, Emily lost control when I refused to sign over my house as a wedding gift. He absorbed this information, his educator's mind probably working through the implications. Your house? The one James built? Yes, I said simply. Christ, he muttered, then apologized for the language. Sorry, it's just, I had no idea she'd made such a request. Jordan never mentioned anything about a house. That didn't surprise me. Jordan rarely mentioned anything of substance to his parents, preferring to keep his life carefully compartmentalized. It's probably why they'd seemed vaguely confused about the wedding budget throughout the planning. They'd assumed their son was covering more than he actually was. What happens now? Gerald asked. Now we all go home, I replied. And tomorrow we figure out what comes next. Heather wanted me to invite you to our hotel tonight. We booked rooms for the weekend. She thought you might need time away from things. The kindness almost broke my resolve. These people who owed me nothing, offering comfort while my own daughter had used my credit cards as weapons against me. Thank you, but I should go home, I said. I need to be in James's house tonight. I need to remember why I protected it. Gerald nodded understanding. As he turned to leave, he paused. Catherine, I raised a son who stood silent while a woman was injured. I'm ashamed of him tonight, and I'm sorry for what Emily has become. After he walked away, Carla and I remained in the car, watching the last of the chaos unfold. Lena had handled everything with remarkable discretion. No public announcements, no dramatic scenes, simply quiet communications and efficient execution. I made a mental note to send her a substantial tip for managing the impossible. Your phone's vibrating, Carla pointed out. I ignored it. It was probably Emily trying new tactics. Or maybe Jordan, finally finding his voice now that his wedding was in shambles. Part of me wanted to answer, to engage in the drama they expected. But that's what I'd always done. Engaged, absorbed, smoothed over. Not tonight. Let's go, I decided. You follow me home? I don't trust my reflexes right now. Of course. As I started the car, my phone buzzed one more time. Against my better judgment, I glanced at it. Not Emily or Jordan, but Lena. Everything's handled. The staff tipped out. Vendor issues managed. Your deposit refunds should process in 3 to 5 business days. I'm sorry it came to this. I showed Carla the message. Professional to the end. That's why you hired her, Carla reminded me. Because she understood what you needed, even when you couldn't say it. The drive home was surreal. California traffic continued its endless flow, lights blinking in the growing darkness. The world kept moving while mine had shifted fundamentally. At stoplights, I caught glimpses of families in other cars. Parents with teenagers heading to dinner, couples on date nights, grandparents driving grandchildren home from activities. Normal life, continuing as if nothing had happened. When I pulled into my driveway, The sensor lights clicked on, illuminating the house James built. Its familiar outline comforted me. The slightly crooked front step he'd never gotten around to fixing, the mailbox he'd reinforced after a storm, the kitchen window where he'd installed a bird feeder so I could watch finches while doing dishes. Carla parked behind me and helped me inside. The house felt different now. Not just shelter, but sanctuary. A place I'd fought to keep, even though Emily couldn't understand why. "Sit," Carla ordered, guiding me to the kitchen table. "I'll make tea, then we'll properly clean that wound." As she moved around my kitchen with practiced familiarity, I let myself sink into the chair James had refinished the year before he died. The wood was worn smooth from years of family meals, homework sessions, late-night talks. Emily had eaten breakfast here every morning before school. Jordan had sat here nervously asking for our permission to propose. How had we gotten from there to here? The kitchen sink where Carla was filling the kettle was the same one James had installed. The window panes above it, the ones I'd considered replacing 2 years ago until Emily needed help with her car payment, still had the tiny imperfections from the original glass. My phone finally stopped buzzing. The silence felt like permission to breathe. "You did the right thing," Carla said, setting down 2 mugs. It took guts. Did it? Or did I just finally run out of everything else to give? She considered this as she dunked tea bags. Maybe that's the same thing. Sometimes courage looks like surrender. The bandage on my arm had started to show fresh blood. The skin throbbed with each heartbeat, a steady reminder of what had transpired. Physical wounds heal, I knew. But what about the other kind? "I don't hate her," I said suddenly. "Emily, I don't hate her." "Of course you don't. Hating would be easier." "I hate what she's become. What I helped her become by always giving in, always saying yes, always protecting her from consequences." Carla pushed the tea toward me. "You can't raise them twice, sweetheart. All you can do is decide what kind of mother you want to be moving forward." Through my kitchen window, I could see the garage, where James had kept his workshop. He'd spent countless hours there, building furniture, carving wooden toys for Emily, fixing things that broke, not because he had to, but because he enjoyed restoring function to broken objects. What would he say about tonight? About Emily? About me finally saying no? "I need to change this bandage properly," I said, standing up. In the bathroom upstairs, I'd find first aid supplies more sophisticated than Carla's emergency kit. Maybe some of James's old prescription antiseptic from when he'd cut his hand 2 decades ago, if it hadn't expired. As I passed the hallway, I paused at the family photos lining the wall. James holding newborn Emily, Emily's first day of kindergarten, her high school graduation. The pictures stopped there. I'd never printed photos from college or her adult life. Most of those moments existed only on social media, filtered and edited to perfection. "Catherine?" Carla called from the kitchen. "Your phone's ringing. House phone." I'd forgotten about the landline James had insisted we keep. "Let it go to voicemail," I called back. But Carla had already picked up. "Monroe residence. Yes, she's here. No, I don't think... Well, you can try." She appeared at the bottom of the stairs. "It's Emily. She says she threw her cell phone and broke it. She's calling from Jordan's room at the hotel. She sounds different." "Different how?" "Scared," Carla admitted. "Actually scared, not performed scared." I descended slowly, my arm aching. Fear could be genuine, or just another manipulation tactic. With Emily, I'd lost the ability to distinguish between authentic emotion and strategic performance. The phone receiver felt heavy as I picked it up. "Emily." "Mom." Her voice was smaller than I'd heard in years. I don't know what to do." It was the admission I'd waited decades to hear. Not an apology, not a demand, but genuine uncertainty. For a moment I felt the pull of old habits, the maternal instinct to fix, to soothe, to solve. But my arm throbbed with fresh reality. "Neither do I, baby," I said honestly. "Neither do I. Mom, Jordan's parents hate me now. Everyone saw what happened. The photographers caught it all." Emily's voice cracked. "I'm ruined." The word hit me with unexpected force. Not hurt, not sorry. Ruined. As if her reputation mattered more than the relationship she'd wounded. "Where's Jordan?" I asked. "In the shower. He hasn't talked to me since you left. He just stood there while his parents took him away to their room. They're probably planning how to get rid of me." Part of me wanted to comfort her, to say all the things a mother should say. But my bandaged arm reminded me that tonight required different responses. "Emily, what did you think would happen?" "You assaulted me." "I didn't mean to." The protest sounded practiced. "The cake stand slipped. I was just—" "You were angry that I wouldn't give you my house," I interrupted. "And you threw a crystal cake stand at me. That's not an accident. That's a choice." Silence stretched across the line. Carla sat beside me, her hand on my good arm, her face carefully neutral. "Everything's falling apart," Emily finally said. "My whole life. You have to fix this." The request, no, the demand, struck me as pure Emily. Even in crisis, she expected me to smooth the way, to repair what she'd broken. "I can't fix this for you," I said. "For the first time in your life, you have to face the consequences of your own actions without me stepping in to save you." Another silence, longer this time. In the background, I heard hotel room sounds, a TV news channel, probably covering local events. Would her wedding cancellation make the news? Redwood Ridge Estate was well connected, popular with minor celebrities and influencers. "Jordan says we'll elope," she said suddenly. "Go to Vegas tomorrow. Get married without all this drama." "Is that what you want?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Or is it damage control? Does it matter?" "To me? Yes. To you, I don't know anymore." "God, Mom, don't be dramatic. I love Jordan. I've always loved Jordan. Today was just stress. Wedding stress. You don't understand." I understood better than she knew. My own wedding had been simple. A backyard ceremony, 20 guests, James's mother's wedding dress altered to fit me. No stress because we weren't trying to perform love. We were choosing to live it. "I need to go," I said. "My arm needs attention." "Wait." Panic edged her voice. "What about the house? Are you still... can we talk about it later? When things are calmer?" And there it was. The reason for her call. Not concern for my injury, not remorse for her actions, but hope that the asset she wanted hadn't been permanently removed from her reach. "The house was never the real issue, Emily," I said. "But you've made it impossible to discuss anything right now. I need time, space, perspective." "How much time?" "I don't know. But..." I hung up gently but firmly. Carla's eyes met mine with a mixture of sympathy and approval. "She'll call back," Carla predicted. "Not on this phone," I replied, taking the receiver off the hook. "And she can't call my cell." I blocked her number. Harsh. Necessary. Carla helped me properly clean and bandage my arm. The gash was deeper than I'd initially thought. Not life-threatening, but enough to likely scar. A permanent reminder of the night I finally said no. After she left, promising to check on me tomorrow, I wandered my quiet house. The home James built with his own hands suddenly felt both fortress and sanctuary. Each room held memories of him. His reading corner in the den where he'd spent hours with blueprints, the entryway closet where he'd carved our initials, the shower he'd retiled the month before he died. I ended up in his workshop. The garage smelled of old wood and lingering aftershave. Phantom scents that must be psychological. It had been 20 years. His workbench still held projects frozen in time. A jewelry box he'd been making for Emily's 16th birthday, half finished when the heart attack struck. Basic tools hung on the pegboard he'd painted with careful measurements, every spot labeled. "I'm sorry," I whispered to his memory. "I let her become someone you wouldn't recognize." My phone buzzed with unknown numbers. Wedding vendors, probably. Or Lena following up. Then a text from an area code I recognized as Jordan's family. "This is Heather. Are you okay? Please call when you're ready. No pressure. Heather Blake, Jordan's mother." I'd met her twice at engagement parties. She'd seemed reserved, almost wary of Emily's dominant personality. Now I wondered if that wariness had been maternal instinct, sensing what I'd refused to see. I'd started to put my phone away when it rang from a blocked number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Catherine!" The voice was deep, unfamiliar. "This is Aaron Peters with the Oakwood Herald. We're covering the Redwood Ridge incident. Can you comment on the alleged assault?" My heart jumped. "How did you get this number?" "Mrs. Monroe, photos are already circulating on social media. The photographer captured the moment of impact. We're trying to get your side of the story before." I disconnected, my hands suddenly shaking. Social media, photos, evidence of my daughter's worst moment, preserved forever in digital amber. I ignored subsequent calls and turned on the evening news. Sure enough, the local segment featured footage of guests leaving Redwood Ridge, the anchor's voiceover dramatic. A high-profile wedding turned violent tonight when the mother of the bride was reportedly attacked. They didn't name Emily. Yet. Privacy laws protected the identities of those involved in domestic disputes. But in a town like Oakwood Heights, secrets had a half-life of hours, not days. The phone rang again. This time my neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez. She'd seen news vans on our street. "Catherine, are you all right? My grandson says there are photos online of Emily throwing something at you at her wedding." News traveled at the speed of teenage social media connections. "I'm fine, Maria. Just tired. Could you do me a favor and tell anyone who asks that I'm not taking visitors tonight?" "Of course, honey. You rest. Tomorrow will be better." But would it? Tonight had changed everything. Not just my relationship with Emily, but my place in the community. I'd been the respected principal, the woman who raised a daughter alone after her husband died young. Now I'd be the mother who canceled her daughter's wedding, the woman at the center of a violent domestic incident. At midnight, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Jordan, still in his tuxedo, looking haggard. I opened the door but kept the chain latched. "What do you want, Jordan?" "I need to apologize," he said. "For Emily. For myself. For all of it." "Where's Emily?" "Sleeping. Her therapist prescribed Xanax years ago. She took 2 and crashed. I hadn't known Emily had a therapist, or anxiety medication, another secret in a relationship full of them." "I didn't know she'd asked for your house," he continued. "I never would have supported that demand. And throwing the cake stand..." He ran his hands through his hair. "I've never seen her violent before." "Before?" He caught the implication. I mean, she's thrown things at walls, broken stuff when she's angry, but never at a person. Never at you." This revelation troubled me more than comforted me. How long had Emily been breaking things in anger? And how had Jordan, her partner, her supposed other half, normalized this behavior. "Go back to the hotel," I said. "Take her to Vegas tomorrow if that's what you both want. But understand that our relationship, mine and Emily's, isn't fixed by a marriage license." "I know," he said sadly. "Mom pulled me aside tonight. She told me I've been enabling Emily's issues, that I've been so grateful she chose me that I've ignored warning signs. At least Heather Blake had seen what I'd missed, or what I'd chosen not to see. Go home, Jordan. Sort out your own life before trying to fix mine." After he left, I took a long shower, careful to keep my bandaged arm dry. The hot water washed away the day, but not its implications. Tomorrow would bring phone calls, explanations, judgments. People would take sides. Some would see me as a wronged mother, others as a vindictive woman who ruined her daughter's wedding. Let them think what they wanted. For the first time in Emily's life, I'd put my own well-being above her desires. The guilt I expected didn't materialize. Instead, I felt a strange, unburdening lightness. The weight of constant accommodation finally lifted. Before bed, I checked my bandage one last time. The bleeding had stopped, but the skin around the wound was discolored, swollen. It would hurt for days, weeks maybe. Good. Physical pain was honest, unlike the emotional manipulations I'd endured. As I lay in bed, I thought of James. He'd been firmer with Emily than I had, setting boundaries, demanding respect, teaching consequences. When she was 7 and had lied about breaking a neighbor's window, he'd made her work off the cost through chores. When she was 12 and had stolen lipstick from a store, he'd marched her back to confess and pay. Children need to learn that actions have prices, he'd told me when I'd worried he was being too harsh. Better to pay in quarters now than dollars later. He'd been right. I'd spent years letting Emily pay in pennies or not at all. Tonight the bill had come due in blood. I fell asleep determined that tomorrow would mark not just the aftermath of a cancelled wedding, but the beginning of a new chapter where I wrote the rules instead of following Emily's demands. Morning light filtered through my bedroom curtains, gentle despite the harsh reality it illuminated. My arm throbbed with a dull ache that announced itself with every movement. I'd slept poorly, waking several times to the phantom sound of my phone ringing or the doorbell chiming. By 7 a.m., I was dressed in comfortable clothes and methodically going through my medicine cabinet for stronger pain medication. The acetaminophen barely touched the pain, and my prescription from James's era had indeed expired long ago. The doorbell actually did ring this time. Carla, arriving early as promised. "Let me see it," she said, setting down 2 cups of coffee from my favorite local shop. "I brought real bandages. None of that grocery store nonsense." As she tended to my arm, I noticed the newspaper she'd tucked under her arm. Local section folded outward. She caught my glance. "It's not terrible," she offered, but her hesitation suggested otherwise. "Show me." The headline read, "Local wedding ends in alleged assault." Below it, a grainy photo captured the moment. Emily's arm raised, the crystal cake stand airborne, my arm instinctively raised to protect myself. The photographer had captured it perfectly, distilling our years of conflict into a single damning frame. "They don't use your names," Carla pointed out. "Privacy protection since it's an active investigation." "Investigation?" She set down the gauze with deliberate care. "Someone called it in. Possibly the photographer or a guest. The police called last night. I answered when they couldn't reach you." My stomach dropped. "What did you tell them?" "The truth. That a 45-year-old woman assaulted her 66-year-old mother with a glass object, causing injury requiring medical attention. They want a statement." The weight of consequences settled around me like fog. This wasn't just a family drama anymore. It was potentially criminal. Assault charges, court appearances, public testimony. "I don't want to press charges," I said immediately. "That's not entirely your decision anymore," Carla warned. "Once police are involved, the state can pursue charges even if the victim doesn't cooperate." We were interrupted by a knock, firm, official. 3 raps in quick succession. Through the peephole, I saw 2 uniformed officers. "Mrs. Monroe, Detective Maria Rodriguez and Officer Timothy Chen. We need to speak with you about last night's incident." I showed them my bandaged arm, took photos with their phones, gave my statement with Carla present as witness. Detective Rodriguez was young enough to have been one of my students' children. Her demeanor professional but kind. "We have multiple witnesses," she explained. "Phone videos from guests, professional photos, your daughter's history of public outbursts documented on social media. We're building a case." "I don't want her arrested," I repeated. "Mrs. Monroe, this isn't just about you anymore. We're looking at patterns of behavior, escalating violence. Your daughter has accumulated noise complaints from her neighbors. 3 instances of property damage at public venues. A previous assault charge from college, dropped when the victim wouldn't cooperate." The information struck me like aftershocks. Emily had hit someone else? When? How had I not known? After the officers left, Carla made me a sandwich I couldn't eat. My phone showed 23 missed calls, including 3 from Lena, who'd left voicemails about vendor follow-up and refund procedures. Emily had tried calling from Jordan's phone, blocked after the 3rd attempt. "I need to see a lawyer," I realized aloud. "Not just for this assault thing, for everything." 4 hours later, I sat in Richard Green's office, the estate attorney who'd handled James's will. He'd aged considerably. Silver hair, reading glasses perched on his nose. But his mind remained sharp. "I want to change my will," I told him directly. "Emily's behavior has forced my hand." He nodded slowly. "I've seen the news. Very unfortunate situation." I detailed Emily's escalating demands, culminating in the previous night's violence. Richard listened without judgment, taking notes in his precise handwriting. "Currently, Emily inherits everything. The house, savings, investments, roughly $800,000 in total assets." He looked over his glasses. "That's a significant change to consider." "I'm certain. May I propose an alternative? Rather than cutting her out entirely, we could establish conditions for inheritance, required anger management, financial counseling, a cooling-off period." I considered this. Pure disinheritance felt like punishment, and I'd spent Emily's life trying not to punish but to teach. Yet teaching required a willing student. "Conditional terms," I agreed. "She receives nothing until she completes a certified anger management program and apologizes, sincerely, without financial incentive. If those conditions aren't met within 2 years, her inheritance goes to the James Monroe Educational Foundation for Single-Parent Families." Richard's pen scratched across paper. "Excellent. We'll need witnesses. 2 people who can vouch for your mental competency and clear intent." Carla served as my first witness. For the second, I called William Chen, the retired superintendent who'd been my mentor. He arrived wearing one of his trademark bow ties, looking older but still commanding. "Catherine," he said, embracing me carefully around my injured arm. "I'm sorry things came to this. Emily was always spirited, but this..." Spirited had been the euphemism we'd all used. Teachers, family, friends. Looking back, it seemed we'd collectively enabled her by renaming aggression as passion, manipulation as ambition. The signing took 30 minutes. 3 copies, each witnessed and notarized. Richard promised to file them immediately, explaining California's requirements for emergency will changes. "What about gifts?" I asked. "Can she contest if I give away significant portions now?" "As long as you're competent, which you clearly are, you can distribute your assets however you wish. But be careful. Obvious retaliation might give her grounds to challenge." Later at the bank, I transferred half my savings to the Educational Foundation. Not revenge, investment. Other single mothers shouldn't have to choose between their dignity and their children's happiness. Back home, I drafted a letter to Emily using James's old typewriter. No email trails, no copy-paste accusations. Just thoughtful words hammered out with intentional pauses. "Dearest Emily, I'm writing this with a bandaged arm and a heavy heart. Last night, you crossed a line I never imagined we'd reach. The physical injury will heal, but the emotional wound cuts deeper. I've changed my will. Not to punish you, but to motivate the growth we both avoided for too long. You can earn your inheritance through genuine change, anger management, therapy, whatever tools you need to understand how we reached this point. I love you. I've always loved you. But love doesn't mean enabling destructive behavior. Your father would never have tolerated the violence you displayed last night. In protecting you from consequences, I failed to prepare you for adulthood. Take time, get help, find yourself beneath the anger and entitlement. When you're ready, truly ready, we can try again. But on healthier terms. Love always, Mom." I mailed it that afternoon. No return receipt, no tracking. Some conversations needed space to breathe. Evening brought unexpected visitors. Heather Blake arrived alone, carrying a casserole and genuine concern. "I've been worried all day," she admitted as I let her in. "Gerald wanted to come, but I thought you might prefer fewer people." Over tea, made in my kitchen with Emily nowhere to demand updates, we talked honestly about our children's relationship. "Jordan's a pleaser," Heather said finally. "He's ignored warning signs because he craves approval. I've enabled that by being too protective. And I've enabled Emily by being too accommodating," I acknowledged. "They're eloping tomorrow," she revealed. "Vegas, as you heard. Jordan says Emily won't drop this until they're married. She thinks it'll force you to forgive everything." "Marriage doesn't erase assault charges." I told him that, but he's not thinking clearly. He's caught between his family's disappointment and Emily's emotional manipulation. We talked until dark, 2 mothers recognizing our shared failures. Before leaving, Heather squeezed my good hand. "The Blakes will support whatever legal proceedings arise. We won't let her get away with what she did." That night, I slept better. My arms still throbbed, but my conscience had quieted. Tomorrow would bring more phone calls, possibly news of Emily's elopement, definitely continued fallout from the incident. But I'd reclaimed something last night. Not just my house or my savings, but my sense of self. For too long, I defined myself as Emily's mother, Emily's supporter, Emily's protector. Now I was Catherine Monroe, a woman with her own value, her own boundaries, her own future. James would be proud. That thought carried me into peaceful sleep, my bandaged arm a reminder not of violence suffered, but of dignity finally claimed. 3 weeks after that night, I stood in my garden at dawn, tending to the rose bushes James had planted the year Emily was born. The California morning air held that peculiar clarity that comes after rain, crisp and fragile as glass. My arm had healed to a pink scar, tender but functional. A physical reminder of when I finally said enough. The police investigation had concluded quietly. Emily and Jordan had indeed eloped in Vegas 2 days after the incident. The prosecutor offered her a plea deal, probation, anger management, and formal apology. Emily took it, completing the program with the same efficiency she applied to everything else in life. She'd even called to deliver the required apology, scripted, hollow, but technically meeting the legal requirements. I hadn't answered. Let her leave the voicemail. Some words need space to cure like concrete. The doorbell chimed and I found a manila envelope on my porch. Inside, photos from the wedding photographer, delivered despite the cancellation. A note attached. These moments captured truth you paid to preserve. No charge. Mark. I leafed through them carefully. Emily radiant but cold. Jordan accommodating but distant. Me on the sidelines of every frame, smiling the practiced smile of mothers who know they're invisible. The final photos showed the sequence clearly. Emily's rage, the flying cake stand, my defensive arm, blood blooming on lavender fabric. I slipped them into James's workshop drawer. Evidence wasn't needed anymore, but perhaps someday Emily would want to see her own violence preserved in glossy paper. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Sarah Blake, Jordan's sister. I wanted you to know Emily's seeing a therapist, voluntarily now. Real therapy, not court-ordered. Jordan says she's confronting issues that go back to college. They've moved to Portland for fresh starts. No one knows we took sides, but we did. The Blakes think you were right. I hope you find peace." I made coffee using James's old percolator and sat at the kitchen table where Emily had dismissed my scrapbook gift. The table now held different papers: transfer documents for the Educational Foundation, scholarship applications from single mothers, letters from families helped by the money I'd redirected. One letter particularly moved me. "Dear Mrs. Monroe, your donation purchased my son's school uniforms. He's the first in our family to attend private school. Yesterday he read aloud in class without stuttering for the first time. You gave him confidence, not just clothing. Thank you. Transformation happened in small moments. Mine had come when glass met flesh. This child's, when new clothes met classroom courage. Carla arrived for our weekly breakfast, bringing newspapers and neighborhood gossip. Maria Rodriguez, the detective? She gave Emily's lawyer hell for pushing plea bargain, said violence against mothers needed stronger consequences. And yet here we are, I replied. Resolution without reconciliation. Sometimes that's the only healthy resolution, Carla observed. We ate James's favorite pancakes, from scratch, thick and imperfect. Through the window, I watched Mrs. Rodriguez watering flowers. Since becoming my de facto bodyguard the night of the incident, she'd transformed from neighbor to friend. Her grandson had written a thank you note for the bicycle helmet I'd bought him, careful printing that reminded me of my teaching days. At noon, Richard Green called. The foundation papers are approved. You're officially chair of the James Monroe Educational Trust. First board meeting. Next month. This week, however, we need to discuss Emily's inheritance challenge. My heart clenched. She's contesting? Not Emily. Jordan's parents. They're serving as character witnesses in Emily's favor, claiming you acted recklessly that night. They want to overturn the conditional terms. The betrayal stung, even expected. Heather's kindness had been temporary. Family loyalty ultimately prevailing over truth. Let them try, I said simply. We have witnesses, police reports, photos. They have a different narrative. Concerned grandparents worried about their future grandchildren's inheritance. Grandchildren. The word stopped me. Emily was pregnant. That's why they'd rushed to marry. That's why Jordan's family had shifted loyalties. After the call, I sat in James's workshop, surrounded by half-finished projects. The jewelry box still waited, suspended in time. On impulse, I picked up his sandpaper and continued where he'd left off. The wood was old, stubborn, but beneath rough edges lived potential for something beautiful. My phone rang. Emily's Vegas number. For the first time since that night, I answered. "Mom?" Her voice was different, quieter. "Did Richard tell you? About your challenge? Or about the baby?" Silence. Then, both, I guess. "We're having a daughter." Emily was going to raise a daughter. The cycle continuing, carrying forward whatever unresolved issues remained between us. "Congratulations," I said, meaning it. "Mom, I've been in therapy. Real therapy. We're unpacking. A lot. Childhood stuff. Dad's death. How I've treated you. The therapist says I developed control issues after Dad died. That I've been terrified of losing people, so I tried to own them instead. Psychology 101. Explanations felt pat, too neat, but they contained truth kernels worth considering. Therapy's good, I acknowledged. Growth requires honest self-examination. I know I can't undo throwing that cake stand, can't erase the assault charge or the cancelled wedding, but I want to understand why. Want our daughter to meet a grandmother who isn't wary of her own child. Our conversation continued carefully, like testing ice that might crack. She apologized, genuinely this time, for years of entitlement masked as affection. I acknowledged my role in enabling, in avoiding confrontation when boundaries needed establishing. Neither of us pretended these words would magically restore what was broken. Progress, not perfection. "About the house," she said finally. "I understand now. It wasn't about the house at all. It was about controlling the last piece of Dad, and controlling you." "Yes," I agreed simply. "Can I come home sometime? After the baby's born? Start over?" I thought of James's workshop, of projects suspended but not abandoned, of my garden, where roses bloomed despite thorns, of second chances and earned forgiveness. "Yes," I said, "but on new terms, with real boundaries this time." After we hung up, I completed the jewelry box James had started. Inside, I placed the scar on my arm. Not the actual tissue, but a photo of it. Physical proof that love sometimes requires pain, that mothers can bleed and still heal, that saying no can be the most compassionate yes we offer. The box would wait. Emily would come home eventually, daughter in tow. We'd navigate grandmotherhood differently than we'd navigated motherhood. Maybe generational trauma could be interrupted, not just inherited. Outside, afternoon light turned ordinary things golden. Garden vegetables, window glass, surgical scars. I sat on my porch, newly registered educational foundation documents beside me, watching children ride bicycles down our quiet street. Some wore helmets I'd purchased, some carried backpacks my donations had funded. Tomorrow would bring its challenges, legal battles with Jordan's family, navigating Emily's pregnancy from distance, board meetings and scholarship decisions. But tonight, I had peace. In my pocket, I carried a photo, not from the wedding, but from our recent mailbox. A pregnant Emily, hand on her growing belly, smiling for real this time. On the back, she'd written, "Her name is Catherine. Some inheritances can't be written into wills. They live in names passed forward, patterns interrupted, love that learns to include boundaries." I was still Emily's mother, always would be. But now I was Catherine first. A woman who'd learned her own worth was non-negotiable. James's workshop door creaked as I set the final coat of varnish on his completed project. Outside, the California twilight painted my suburb in shades of forgiveness and possibility. Tomorrow's chapter waited to be written. Tonight I simply breathed air that tasted of freedom earned, not given. And that was enough. Finally. Beautifully enough. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch and it will talk.